Autumn in Boston was always especially beautiful. Melissa Parker loved this time of year, when the leaves in Commonwealth Park turned golden and crimson, and the cool breeze from the bay brought freshness after the stifling summer. It was here, amid these autumn colors, that she first met Jason Foster 4 years ago. It was a classic case of 2 coffee cups, 1 collision, and a latte spilled on a white blouse. Melissa was rushing to a meeting with a potential client, and Jason Foster, a promising financial analyst, was rushing to a meeting. Later, they often joked that their relationship began with a stain on a perfectly ironed $89 blouse. At 28, Melissa had already established herself as a talented interior designer whose name was beginning to be heard in Boston's professional circles. She had her own small studio, with only 3 employees so far, but a steady stream of clients and a growing portfolio. Jason, a year older, worked as a financial analyst at Keller Investments, a company known for its aggressive strategies and high ambitions. Ambitions that Jason himself fully shared. Their first date took place at a small Italian restaurant in the North End. Jason was an attentive listener, and Melissa was struck by how genuinely interested he was in her work, her dreams of owning her own studio, and her projects for museums and galleries. She, in turn, was impressed by his confidence and clear vision for his future. "In 5 years, I'll be a managing director," he said, twirling a glass of red wine in his hands. "And in 10, I'll open my own investment fund." The first year of their relationship seemed perfect. Weekends together on Cape Cod, spontaneous trips to New York for design exhibitions, evenings spent sitting on the roof of Melissa's apartment building, watching the city lights and discussing their dreams. Their friends joked that such perfect compatibility only happens in romantic comedies. By the end of their first year together, Melissa agreed to move into Jason's spacious apartment in Back Bay, a neighborhood where historic red brick buildings stood alongside modern skyscrapers. With views of the Charles River, high ceilings, and large windows, this apartment became the first shared space that Melissa could completely transform with her own hands. During what investigators later called the phase of complete idyll, the couple seemed inseparable. They attended Keller Investments corporate parties together, where Melissa charmed Jason's colleagues with her naturalness and intelligence. She also introduced Jason to her clients, who included influential people in Boston. This mutual expansion of their social circles seemed like a natural symbiosis of 2 ambitious professionals. Ashley Turner, Melissa's best friend since their days at design school and now a successful architect, later noted in her statement to the police. They seemed like the perfect couple. They complemented each other. Melissa was creative, emotional, impulsive. Jason was rational, strategic, and balanced. It was Ashley who first noticed how the dynamics of their relationship changed when Jason's career began to take off. In their 3rd year together, Jason received a significant promotion, becoming deputy head of the analytics department. This coincided with a period when Melissa's studio faced serious financial difficulties. One of her major clients went bankrupt without paying for an almost completed project. Melissa was forced to give up her spacious studio in the city center and move her business to a small space on the outskirts, laying off 2 of her employees. She often worked at home at night, trying to fulfill orders on her own to save on subcontractor fees. At the same time, she actively helped Jason prepare for an important presentation to the board of directors, reviewing his materials, discussing strategic decisions, and even working on the presentation design. Jason seemed to appreciate her support, but he was staying late at work more and more often, and his schedule of meetings was becoming increasingly busy. Several times, Melissa organized romantic evenings, which were canceled at the last minute due to an urgent call or important meeting. Jason, a Harvard Business School graduate, began to attract the attention of the company's top executives, especially Howard Brooks, vice president of Keller Investments, who often invited Jason to closed meetings and informal dinners at his country house, where, as it later turned out, Jason met his daughter Emily. Ryan Collins, Jason's colleague and best friend, who worked as an investment manager at the same company, later admitted in an interview with documentary filmmakers, I saw Jason change. Success made him colder, more calculating. He talked more and more about strategic connections, about positioning himself correctly within the company. He mentioned Melissa less and less. By the end of their third year together, Melissa began to notice these changes, but she attributed them to the stress of Jason's increased responsibilities at work. She tried to be understanding and supportive, often giving up her own plans to accommodate his schedule. During this period, Melissa turned down an offer to work on the design of a new restaurant in Chicago, a project that could have significantly enhanced her professional reputation, but would have required regular travel between Boston and Chicago for 6 months. She always put his career above her own, Ashley recalls. Not because Jason demanded it. It's just the way Melissa is. When she loves, she gives herself completely. For her, their relationship was as important a project as any design job. At the beginning of their 4th year together, Melissa noticed strange changes in Jason's behavior. He started putting a password on his phone, which he had never done before. He began taking calls in another room. His explanations for being late from work became increasingly vague. She found a check from Chez Maurice, one of the most expensive and romantic restaurants in Boston, in his jacket pocket. Jason and she had planned to go there for their anniversary, but never did because of his business trip. It was a winter evening in early December. Snow was falling outside their apartment window. Melissa was cooking dinner, Jason's favorite pasta with seafood. She listened to Christmas tunes and imagined how they would celebrate the holidays. Maybe they would go to Vermont for a few days, as they had discussed back in the summer. Jason's phone, lying on the kitchen table, lit up with a notification. Melissa had no intention of reading his messages. She really didn't. But the name Emily and the first words of the message visible on the lock screen made her heart sink. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I miss you." Jason came home late and immediately noticed the change in Melissa's mood. When he asked her what was wrong, she asked him directly about the message. For the first time in their relationship, Jason looked taken aback, but quickly explained that Emily was a new junior analyst in their department and that they had a work meeting tomorrow about a project. Melissa pretended to believe him, but the icy lump in her stomach told her something was wrong. In the weeks that followed, she began to notice more and more oddities. A new shirt she had never seen before, a perfume she could faintly smell on his neck, but which Jason had never used, changes in his schedule without warning. A week before Christmas, Melissa organized a small holiday party for their friends at their apartment. Jason promised to be home by 7, but called at the last minute to say he was delayed by an urgent meeting. When Ryan Collins, who was invited to the same party, arrived on time, Melissa accidentally found out that there had been no urgent meeting at the office. "I saw the look on her face change when Ryan said he had been at the office until closing time and there had been no meeting," Ashley said in her testimony. Melissa didn't say anything, but something in her gaze changed. It was as if something had gone out. Jason showed up at almost 10 p.m. when most of the guests had already left. He apologized, but it sounded hollow and insincere. There was tension between them that was noticeable even to their remaining friends. After that evening, Melissa became quiet and withdrawn. She no longer asked Jason about his delays or suggested plans together. Something between them had broken, but she still hoped that these were temporary difficulties, that after the holidays and the start of the new year, everything would work out. She didn't know that the new year would be the beginning of the end of their perfect love story, and that over the course of the year, events would take a turn that no one could have predicted. The January cold penetrated to the bone. Melissa looked through the fogged-up window of their apartment at the gray Boston sky, from which rare snowflakes fell lazily. 2 weeks had passed since New Year's, and the tension between her and Jason was only growing. They hardly spoke, existing in a strange parallel world where everything looked normal on the surface, but everyone could feel a storm brewing. That evening, Jason came home earlier than usual. Melissa noticed that he looked unusually composed, as if he were preparing for an important presentation. His gaze did not linger on her, wandering over the familiar objects of their shared life. The photographs on the walls, the books on the shelves, the little things that had become part of their shared history over the past 4 years. "We need to talk," Jason said, and his words sounded like a sentence. Melissa had always thought that if their relationship ever ended, it would be after an emotional, heated conversation where they sorted things out. But the reality turned out to be completely different. Jason spoke calmly, almost rehearsed, avoiding her gaze. He talked about how they had grown in different directions, how their life goals no longer aligned, and that he needed space for personal growth. The corporate cliches Jason used, as if he were talking about restructuring an inefficient department rather than 4 years of love, hurt more than if he had yelled or accused her of something. "It's not you, it's me," he said, a line from a cheap sitcom, and Melissa felt something inside her break. It was only when Jason mentioned that he had already found an apartment and was planning to move out the following week that Melissa realized the reality of what was happening. Everything had been decided, prepared, planned, and she was assigned the role of a spectator in the play about the end of their relationship. The first few days after Jason left turned into a blur for Melissa. She called him. He didn't answer. She wrote messages that remained unread, but without a response. Ashley tried to support her, but even her best friend couldn't understand the depth of emptiness Melissa felt. "It's like someone took my soul out and left only the shell behind," Melissa told Ashley during one of their evenings with a bottle of wine. Ashley, who had known Melissa since college, noticed alarming signs. Her friend, always full of energy and creative ideas, could now sit motionless for hours, staring at a single point. She forgot to eat, lost track of time, and didn't answer work calls. 3 weeks after they broke up, when Melissa finally left the house to meet with a potential client, only under Ashley's persistent pressure, something happened that completely knocked her off her feet. At the Harvest Cafe on Newberry Street, where she often went with Jason, Melissa saw him. He was sitting at a table by the window, chatting animatedly with an elegant blonde. His eyes had that same look, a mixture of admiration and desire that had once been reserved only for her. Melissa froze, clutching her sketchbook so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She watched as Jason leaned toward the woman, touching her hand in a gesture that was so familiar to Melissa. And suddenly it all made sense. The lies, the distance, the strange phone calls. There was no personal growth or differing life goals. There was just another person. That evening, Melissa opened the social media accounts she had ignored since their breakup for the first time. On Ryan's profile, whom she still counted as a friend, she found a photo from a corporate event. In it, Jason was standing next to the blonde from the cafe. The caption under the photo read, "Jason and Emily Brooks at the presentation of a new project." Emily Brooks, daughter of Howard Brooks, vice president of Keller Investments. After several hours of frantic searching on the internet, Melissa learned more about this woman than she did about some of her friends. A Princeton graduate, marketing director at her father's company, 29 years old, she enjoys horseback riding and tennis. In an article about Boston's rising business stars, Emily was described as a talented marketer with an impeccable eye for promising projects. Melissa looked at the photos of Emily smiling. Perfect, sophisticated, with impeccable taste and connections that Melissa would never have access to, and felt something dark and painful growing inside her. It wasn't just jealousy, but a deep sense of injustice. 4 years of her life had been simply crossed out for the sake of a woman who could open the right doors for Jason in the world of finance. In the weeks that followed, Melissa tried to return to normal life. She forced herself to get up in the morning, meet with clients, and work on projects. But her creative spark seemed to have gone out. Her sketches were lifeless, her presentations mechanical. Clients began to express dissatisfaction, some even refusing her services. Ashley, seeing her friend's condition, suggested that she move for a while. to change her surroundings, to distract herself from the memories that filled every corner of her apartment. Melissa agreed, but even in the new space, thoughts of Jason and Emily haunted her. She began to follow their social media accounts. At first, it seemed innocent, just a desire to know if Jason was really happy, if the relationship was really serious. But gradually, it turned into an obsession. Melissa created fake accounts to gain access to private profiles. She saved every photo, every mention of them, analyzing their facial expressions, body language, and friends' comments. "You have to stop doing this," Ashley told her after catching Melissa crying over a photo of Jason and Emily at a charity gala. "It's not healthy. It's destroying you." But Melissa couldn't stop. She convinced herself that as soon as she found proof that their relationship wasn't real, that Jason was using Emily the same way he had once used her, she would be able to let go of the past and move on. 2 months after the breakup, something happened that changed the course of events forever. Melissa was browsing the business section of the local newspaper when she came across a small article about the engagement of Emily Brooks, the daughter of a prominent financier, and Jason Foster, a promising analyst at Keller Investments. The article mentioned that the wedding was planned for the end of the year and promised to be one of the most notable events on Boston's social calendar. Melissa reread the lines over and over, not believing her eyes. An engagement, just 2 months after their breakup. Something didn't add up in this story. Jason always said he didn't believe in the institution of marriage, that it was an outdated social construct. He mocked his friends who were rushing to put on the shackles, as he put it. And now he was engaged, to a woman he had known for only a few months. This news was a turning point. Whereas before Melissa had simply followed them on social media, now she began to physically follow the couple. She found out where Emily lived, in a luxurious penthouse in Beacon Hill. She began to study their daily routine, where Emily liked to drink her morning coffee, which restaurants they went to with Jason when they went to the gym. Melissa parked her car across from the Keller Investments office to watch Jason and Emily leave the building together. She would reserve a table at the same restaurants, sitting far enough away to avoid being noticed, but close enough to observe them. Once, she even signed up for a trial session at the same elite sports club that Emily attended and watched from behind the towel racks as Emily worked out with her personal trainer. "I just need to understand what's so special about her," she explained to Ashley when she expressed growing concern about her behavior. But even to herself, Melissa couldn't explain why she bought a wig and sunglasses so she wouldn't be recognized during her observations, or why she started keeping a detailed diary of all of Emily and Jason's movements, noting even what clothes they were wearing and who they smiled at. Deep down, she knew she had crossed some invisible line. She skipped client meetings to follow them, didn't answer her phone, forgot to eat. Her apartment was slowly turning into a weird museum of their relationship. There were photos of Jason everywhere, magazine clippings, notes, things he had left behind. In the corner of the living room, an improvised investigation board appeared on the wall with photos of Jason and Emily connected by red threads, with dates and notes about the places they had visited. Ashley, who visited Melissa after a week of no answers to her calls, was shocked by what she saw. "What are you doing, Mel?" she asked, looking at this wall of obsession. "Gathering evidence," Melissa replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Their relationship is a farce, a business deal. He doesn't love her. He can't love her." Ashley tried to talk to her, suggested she see a professional, but Melissa dismissed these suggestions. She was sure she was on the verge of an important discovery, that she would soon find something that would destroy this perfect couple and bring Jason back. That evening, after Ashley left, Melissa took Jason's last gift out of her desk drawer, an elegant Mont Blanc pen he had given her on their 4th anniversary, just a month before they broke up. She twirled it between her fingers, remembering how he had said that this pen was a symbol of her creative journey, which he would always support. "Liar," Melissa whispered, looking at the photo of Jason smiling on the wall. "You planned it all All this time, you were preparing to leave me for her." Melissa didn't sleep that night. She sat in front of her computer, creating yet another fake account to gain access to private photos of Jason and Emily's engagement. Her eyes were red from the screen and lack of sleep, her hands trembling slightly as she typed. At dawn, she finally found what she was looking for, an album of photos from the engagement party. Jason and Emily surrounded by Boston's elite, Howard Brooks raising a toast to his future son-in-law, and the ring, a massive diamond on Emily's slender hand, which Melissa was sure was worth a year's profit from her design studio. Something in Jason's expression in these photos, a mixture of triumph and calculation, finally confirmed what Melissa had suspected. It wasn't love. It was a career move. "I knew," she whispered, saving photo after photo. "I always knew." At that moment, a plan began to form in her mind. It was still vague and unclear, but with every hour she spent studying Jason and Emily's life, the plan became more and more concrete. If their wedding was a business deal, then she, Melissa, had to become the force majeure that would break that deal. Spring was gradually arriving in Boston, reluctantly giving way to the long winter. The first flowers were blooming in the city parks, and the minds of the townspeople were turning to the coming warmth. But inside Melissa Parker, winter continued to rage, cold, calculating, and merciless. It had been 4 months since she broke up with Jason. 4 months during which her heart had traveled a long way from overwhelming pain to something darker and more dangerous. The grief that had initially paralyzed her had turned into icy anger, crystal clear and impeccably structured, like a mathematical formula. Ashley noticed the changes in her friend before they became obvious to those around her. Melissa no longer cried over Jason's photos. She no longer called him in the middle of the night with drunken declarations of love. She no longer endlessly discussed what she had done wrong. Instead, a new Melissa emerged, composed, calm, and strangely determined. She began to rebuild her career with a methodicalness that had not been characteristic of her before. She returned to abandoned projects, updated her portfolio, and re-established contact with clients. In a few weeks, she turned her business from a sinking ship into something stable and promising. Even her creative style changed. Previously bright and eclectic, it now became more restrained, almost clinical in its precision. Melissa did a thorough cleaning of her apartment. All traces of Jason's presence disappeared. Photos, gifts, books he had left behind. Even the furniture they had chosen together was replaced. Only in the far corner of the storage room, in a locked box, were some things from their past kept. A few photos, concert tickets, notes. And among them was that very Mont Blanc pen, Jason's last gift. Ashley, who was helping with the renovation, was encouraged by these changes. It seemed that Melissa was finally moving on. But something in her friend's eyes, some new cold gleam, made Ashley feel a vague sense of unease. One evening, after finishing her sketches for a new project, Melissa opened her laptop and began what had become her evening ritual, checking Emily and Jason's social media accounts. Every day, there was more and more information. The wedding preparations were in full swing. Emily was clearly taking a traditional approach to the wedding and sharing planning details on her private Instagram account. Thanks to the fake profile Melissa had created as a wedding decor specialist, she had access to these updates. The venue for the ceremony was the historic Campbell House Mansion in the suburbs of Boston. Wedding menu tastings at a Michelin-starred restaurant, fittings for a dress from a famous designer, visits to a jewelry store to select wedding rings. Every detail of this perfect celebration, planned for June, was like hydrochloric acid, eating away at the remnants of pain in Melissa's heart and leaving only pure, unadulterated rage. Methodically, like a professional scout, she gathered information. The names of the bridesmaids and groomsmen, the exact time of the ceremony, the seating arrangement. She wrote all these details in a special black-covered notebook that she always carried with her and never showed to anyone. In early May, an event occurred that became the catalyst for the final break. Melissa met with Ryan Collins, Jason's colleague and friend, at a coffee shop near his office. It was their first meeting since the breakup, and Melissa had carefully prepared herself to look composed, successful, and completely unaffected by what had happened. "Glad to see you're okay," Ryan said after exchanging the usual pleasantries. "To be honest, I was worried." Melissa smiled, a perfectly rehearsed, calm smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Life goes on. I'm completely focused on my career right now. I'm planning to open a full-fledged studio by the end of the year." They talked about work, mutual acquaintances, and the latest city news. Melissa skillfully steered the conversation, avoiding any direct mention of Jason and Emily until she felt the moment was right. "By the way, I never congratulated them in person," she said casually. "The wedding is in June, right? I guess the invitations have already been sent out." Ryan visibly tensed up, and Melissa could almost physically feel his discomfort. "Yes, at the end of June, at Campbell House." "It's a beautiful place," Melissa nodded. "I did a project there last year. The acoustics in the main hall are wonderful." There was an awkward pause. Ryan was clearly struggling with himself, deciding whether to speak or not. Finally, he said, "Melissa, I have something to tell you. You're not on the guest list." The words hit her like a slap in the face. It wasn't that she had really expected an invitation, but to hear it so bluntly from someone she considered a friend. "I was in favor of inviting you," Ryan continued, staring into his cup. "I said it would be the right thing to do, given our history. But Jason said it would be inappropriate, and Emily was worried it would create tension among the guests." Melissa forced herself to keep smiling, even though she was boiling inside. "Of course, I understand. It's their day. It's their decision. The thing is," Ryan lowered his voice, "they invited everyone from our mutual circle. Everyone except you." That evening, when she got home, Melissa experienced such a violent fit of rage that she smashed the mirror in the bathroom. Looking at her distorted reflection in the shards, she suddenly felt a strange calm. Something finally clicked in her head, and the chaos of thoughts and emotions suddenly formed a clear pattern. That night, for the first time, she wrote the word "plan" in her black notebook. In the weeks that followed, Melissa continued to gather information, but now with a specific goal in mind. She learned that the wedding ceremony was scheduled for June 28th at Campbell House, a historic mansion with a large garden and an artificial lake. The reception would begin at 4 p.m. and the ceremony itself at 5:30 p.m. About 200 guests were expected, including the entire top brass of Keller Investments and Boston's business elite. Melissa found the contractor responsible for the wedding's floral arrangements. She studied the website of the catering company that would be serving the event. She looked through the profiles of all the staff members mentioned in connection with the event. "I don't understand why you're doing this," Ashley said during one of their dinners. "You're only hurting yourself." Melissa shrugged. "I just want to know that I'm not missing anything important. It's part of the healing process, seeing that life goes on." Ashley didn't look convinced. "You've changed somehow, Mel. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it bothers me." "I've just finally found clarity," Melissa replied with the same strange smile that now often appeared on her face. In early June, Melissa took action. She bought a new phone with a prepaid SIM card. She created a new email address under the name Alice Montgomery. She registered a company called Elite Event Solutions with a minimum set of documents and a simple but professional-looking website. On behalf of this company, she wrote to Campbell House, introducing herself as an event consultant specializing in premium weddings. She expressed interest in working with them and asked for permission to visit the mansion to familiarize herself with the premises for her potential clients. After receiving approval, Melissa visited Campbell House 2 weeks before Jason and Emily's wedding. The manager showed her all the facilities, including the main hall where the ceremony was to take place, the rooms for the bride and groom to get ready, and the extensive gardens surrounding the mansion. Melissa asked professional questions, took notes, and photographed the interiors and grounds, all with the eye of an experienced event planner. She paid particular attention to the security system, the location of the cameras, and the staff schedule. When she got home, she added this information to her black notebook, which now contained detailed information about every aspect of the upcoming wedding. That same evening, she visited a website that posted lists of temporary job openings for service personnel. As she had expected, Campbell House had posted an ad seeking additional waitstaff for a large event on June 28th. On behalf of Alice Montgomery, she sent a resume with fake references. 3 days later, she received a call inviting her to a short interview. Melissa prepared thoroughly. She changed her hairstyle, added thin-framed glasses, and used makeup to make her face less recognizable, but not suspiciously different from the photo on her resume. The interview went well. Alice received confirmation that she would be among the staff serving at the wedding on June 28th. She was sent a schedule, dress code instructions, and a pass to enter the premises. Ashley noticed changes in her friend's behavior. Melissa stopped talking about Jason and Emily all the time. She no longer scrolled through their social media with an obsessive look on her face. Instead, she seemed focused on her work and even began to show interest in new acquaintances. For the first time in a long time, she agreed to go on a date arranged by mutual friends. "I'm glad you're moving on," Ashley said during their traditional Sunday brunch. "I finally realized that some chapters just need to be closed," Melissa replied. "There's no point in holding on to the past." Ashley felt relieved, but something in her friend's tone made her wary. Too perfect an answer, too calm a voice. It was as if Melissa was playing the part of someone who had gotten over the breakup, rather than actually getting over it. "Are you sure you're okay?" Ashley asked. "You know, sometimes when people seem too calm after such stress—" "I feel great," Melissa interrupted with a smile. "Finally free. It's like I've taken off a heavy backpack that I've been carrying for years." In the last week before the wedding, Melissa finished her preparations. She bought clothes that met the staff requirements: black pants, a white shirt, black shoes. She ordered several items from an online store, which were delivered to a pickup point rather than her home address. 3 days before the wedding, she rented a car, an inconspicuous gray sedan, instead of her recognizable red hatchback. She put a bag with essentials and a change of clothes in the trunk. The evening before the wedding, Melissa called Ashley and said she was going out of town for the weekend to clear her head and work on new projects. Her friend felt a strange uneasiness again, but Melissa sounded so convincing and rational that Ashley decided not to insist. After the call, Melissa opened her black notebook and looked through all her notes again. Then she took a locked box from the storage room containing items from her life with Jason. Among the photos and mementos, she found what she was looking for: a Mont Blanc pen, his last gift to her. Melissa stared at the elegant black body with the silver cap for a long time. Then she carefully placed the pen in a small velvet pouch and hid it in her pocket. She checked the contents of her bag one last time, making sure everything she needed was there. Then she took a shower, drank a cup of herbal tea, and went to bed. Strangely, on this night, the eve of the day she had been preparing for so long, Melissa slept deeply and peacefully, for the first time in many months. Her face, relaxed in sleep, looked almost serene. In the morning, she woke up with the first rays of the sun. She took her time showering, drank coffee, and checked her email. Then she put on a simple dress, pulled her hair back into a neat bun, and applied minimal makeup. At the last moment before leaving, she paused in front of the mirror in the hallway. Her reflection showed a calm, composed woman. No traces of her former obsession, no crazy gleam in her eyes, only cold, crystal clarity. "Today," she whispered to her reflection, "today, everything will change." Melissa grabbed her bag, the keys to her rental car, and left the apartment, quietly closing the door behind her. The morning of June 28th was perfectly clear. As if on cue, the sun gently illuminated the historic Campbell House mansion, which was preparing to host one of the most talked-about social events of the year. The roses in the garden seemed to stand tall to greet the important day, and the artificial lake sparkled like a mirror, reflecting the cloudless sky. In the east wing of the mansion, in the spacious bridal room, Emily Brooks sat in front of an antique mirror while the stylist finished her intricate hairstyle. 3 bridesmaids bustled around, adjusting their own lavender dresses and periodically checking their phones. "Are you nervous?" one of them asked, catching Emily's reflection in the mirror. Emily smiled, the confident smile of a woman who is getting exactly what she planned. "Not at all. It's a perfect day." In the opposite wing of the building, Jason Foster, surrounded by his groomsmen, looked less relaxed. He kept adjusting his bow tie, checking his phone, and taking small sips of the scotch Ryan Collins had offered him. "It's not too late to run away," Ryan joked, but something in his tone made Jason look at him more closely. "You're not serious," Jason replied, returning to his reflection in the mirror. "This is the best thing that could have happened in my career, in my life." Ryan nodded meaningfully, but said nothing. Something in his friend's choice of words, career before life, made him wonder, not for the first time, about the real motives behind this marriage. At the same time, 15 miles from the mansion, Melissa Parker was already completely ready. She checked her appearance in the mirror of the hotel room she had rented under the name of Alice Montgomery. Black pants, white shirt, hair hidden under a black cap with the catering service logo. Thin-rimmed glasses and minimal makeup made her almost unrecognizable to those who knew her superficially. Melissa made sure that the velvet pouch with the Mont Blanc pen was safely tucked away in the inside pocket of her shirt. Then she methodically checked the contents of the small bag, which contained Alice's documents, a change of clothes, and a few other items whose purpose was known only to her. At exactly 1:30 p.m., Melissa left the hotel and got into a rented gray sedan. Her face was completely expressionless, her eyes focused on the road. No doubts, no hesitation, only cold, calculated concentration. Meanwhile, at Campbell House, there was a pleasant bustle of preparation. Florists were finishing arrangements of white roses and lavender. Musicians were tuning their instruments. Staff were setting up tables for the cocktail reception, which was to begin at 4 p.m., an hour and a half before the ceremony. Melissa arrived at 2:15 p.m., parking in the remote staff parking lot. She presented her pass to the security guard, who quickly checked her name on the list and nodded, allowing her to pass. Inside, she immediately found the catering manager, who quickly briefed her and several other temporary workers on their duties. "Alice, you'll be in charge of drinks in the West Hall, where the groom and his friends will be getting ready before the ceremony," the manager said, handing her a tray. "Make sure they're happy and always have something to drink, but don't let anyone get too drunk, especially the groom." Melissa nodded, memorizing the layout of the rooms and corridors, while the manager gave a brief briefing. She was lucky. She had been assigned exactly where she needed to be. The next 2 hours were spent in intense preparation. Melissa performed her duties professionally, remaining inconspicuous, as good staff should. She served drinks to the butlers, smiled discreetly at their jokes, and watched intently when Emily's father, Howard Brooks, entered the room to personally check on the preparations. Jason seemed completely absorbed in the upcoming ceremony. His face reflected a mixture of nervousness and triumph. He periodically checked his phone and once went out to talk privately with his future father-in-law. By 4 p.m., the first guests began to arrive. In the West Wing, the bridesmaids were putting the finishing touches on the preparations. Melissa continued to do her job professionally, and no one paid her much attention. At 4:45 p.m., 45 minutes before the ceremony, Jason suddenly separated himself from the group. "I need some time to collect my thoughts," he said, heading for the exit. "I'll take a walk in the garden." Ryan offered to accompany him, but Jason shook his head. 15 minutes alone with myself before changing my life forever. That's not too much to ask, is it? As soon as Jason left, Melissa quietly slipped out of the West Wing. She knew where he was headed. During her previous visit to Campbell House as an event consultant, she had carefully studied the grounds and noticed a small gazebo at the far end of the garden, hidden from the main area by thick hydrangea bushes. It was the perfect place for someone seeking privacy. Melissa chose a less conspicuous route through the service entrance, bypassing the main part of the garden where the guests were already gathering. She moved quickly, but unobtrusively, like someone on a mission. Jason was indeed in the gazebo, standing with his back to the entrance and looking out at the artificial lake. His posture was thoughtful, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn around when he heard footsteps, probably assuming it was one of the groomsmen coming for him. 5 more minutes, he said without turning around. I'm almost ready. At 5:05 p.m., when the guests had already filled the rows of chairs in front of the arch decorated with white roses, and the musicians began to play the first chords of the wedding march, Ryan Collins looked increasingly concerned. Where's Jason? He asked the other groomsmen. Has anyone seen him? Emily, still in her room, was unaware of the delay. Her father was growing impatient, checking his watch. Ryan and 2 other groomsmen went looking for Jason. They split up, checking different parts of the garden. It was Ryan who found him in the gazebo. At first, he only saw the motionless figure of his friend sitting on a bench. Jason, are you okay? Everyone's waiting. But when he got closer, his words stuck in his throat. Jason was sitting unnaturally straight, his eyes wide open, but empty. A thin trickle of blood flowed from a small wound on his neck, almost invisible at first glance, staining his immaculate white collar. Ryan froze, his brain refusing to process what he was seeing. Then he noticed something shiny sticking out of Jason's neck, a thin silver rod. Only when he took a step back did he realize it was the nib of an expensive pen, plunged precisely into the jugular vein. Ryan's scream pierced the idyllic atmosphere of the garden. Within minutes, people surrounded the gazebo. Some tried to find his pulse, some called an ambulance and the police, and some just screamed. Emily, who had run to the noise in her snow-white dress, fell to her knees, staring at her fiancé's motionless body. In the chaos that followed the discovery of the body, no one noticed one of the waitresses quietly leaving the premises, changing out of her uniform into regular clothes in the staff room and exiting through the side gate. By 5:45 p.m., the Campbell House grounds were cordoned off by police. The guests, many still in shock, were gathered in the main hall, where they were asked to remain for questioning. A medical examiner examined the body, while forensic investigators thoroughly searched the gazebo and surrounding area. At 6:10 p.m., Detective Sarah Holt arrived, a short woman with sharp features and piercing gray eyes. Although she was in her early 40s, her dark hair was already streaked with gray. She moved with the precision and economy of someone accustomed to efficiency. "What do we have?" she asked her partner, Detective Michael Ramirez, who had arrived at the scene earlier. "The victim is Jason Foster, 33, a financial analyst. Killed on his wedding day, presumably between 4:50 and 5:05 p.m., Ramirez replied, looking through his notes. "Cause of death? Penetrating wound to the jugular vein. The murder weapon appears to be an expensive pen, a Mont Blanc or something similar. The body was discovered by the victim's friend, Ryan Collins, at approximately 5:05 p.m. Holt nodded as she surveyed the crime scene. "Witnesses? No one saw anything. The victim told his friends he wanted to be alone before the ceremony. At that time, the guests were gathering and the staff was busy with final preparations. The gazebo is in a secluded spot. Signs of a struggle? Minimal. It looks like the victim didn't even resist. The expert suggests the attack was sudden and precise. One blow straight to the jugular vein. Death was quick." Holt crouched down next to the spot where the body had been found, now taken to the morgue. She carefully examined the bench and the surrounding area. "A professional strike," she remarked. "Someone knew where to hit." She got up and headed for the main building, where witnesses were waiting. On the way, she stopped at the service entrance, where several police officers were questioning the staff. "Was anyone absent when the body was discovered?" she asked. The catering manager, pale with shock, shook his head. "I'm not sure. We had a lot of temporary workers today. I need to check the lists." Holt nodded. "Do it immediately. I want to know the name of everyone who was on the premises." In the main hall, Holt first spoke to Emily Brooks, who was supported by her bridesmaids and father. The girl was in shock, barely able to answer questions coherently. "Did Jason have any enemies?" Holt asked. "Anyone who might have wanted to harm him?" Emily shook her head. "He was ambitious, but everyone loved him. I don't understand who could have done this." Howard Brooks, who remained remarkably calm for a man whose daughter had just suffered a tragedy, interjected, "Jason was a promising young man in a competitive business. Perhaps someone was jealous of his success." Holt looked at him. "Do you have any specific suspicions, Mr. Brooks?" "No, but I advise you to look for a motive in the professional sphere." Holt then spoke with Ryan Collins, who was still pale and shaken. Unlike Howard Brooks, he did not hide his emotions. "I don't understand who could have done this," he said, shaking his head. "It must have been someone who knew Jason well, someone who knew he would go to that gazebo before the ceremony." "Was that his usual behavior? To seek solitude in stressful situations?" Ryan thought for a moment. "Yes, I suppose so. He always liked to have a few minutes to himself before important events." Holt wrote something down in her notebook. "Did Jason have any serious personal conflicts? Maybe ex-partners who didn't take the breakup well?" Ryan visibly tensed, which did not escape the detective's attention. "There was one girl, Melissa. They were together for 4 years, and then he broke up with her for Emily." "How long ago was that?" "About 8 months ago. Melissa took it hard." "Hard in what sense?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, you know, the usual after a breakup. Calls, messages, nothing threatening." Holt looked at him intently. "Are you sure? Was there nothing that seemed alarming to you?" After a pause, Ryan sighed. "I saw her a couple of months ago. She asked about the wedding. She seemed too calm. I don't know how to explain it. There was just something wrong with the way she looked at me." "Did you see her today?" "No, she wasn't invited. Jason and Emily decided it would be inappropriate." By evening, the initial questioning of witnesses was complete. Holt gathered her colleagues to summarize the findings. "We have our first leads," she said, looking through her notes. "First, the murder was planned and precise. This was not a crime of passion. Second, the killer knew the victim's habits and the specifics of the wedding venue." Ramirez nodded. "And we have a potential suspect, the ex-girlfriend, Melissa Parker. We've already sent a patrol to her apartment." "There's something else," added one of the officers. The catering manager checked the staff lists. One of the temporary waitresses, Alice Montgomery, disappeared right after the body was found. And when we checked the address and phone number listed on her application, they turned out to be fake. Holt nodded slowly, feeling the pieces of the puzzle start to fall into place. "Check the surveillance cameras. I want to see the face of this Alice Montgomery, and find me everything you can about Melissa Parker." At the end of the day, when the guests had left and only the police and a few members of Emily's family remained at Campbell House, Holt stood at the window, looking out at the floodlit garden. The day that was supposed to be the beginning of a happy family life had turned into the beginning of a murder investigation. Her phone rang. It was Ramirez. "We checked Melissa Parker's apartment. She's not home. The neighbors say she's out of town for the weekend. Also, we found something on one of the surveillance cameras. You should take a look at it." 3 days after the murder, Detective Sarah Holt's office at the Boston Police Department resembled a military operations headquarters. The walls were covered with photographs, diagrams, and timelines. The focus was on 3 key figures: the victim, Jason Foster, his fiancée, Emily Brooks, and the prime suspect, Melissa Parker. "We're dealing with a classic crime of passion, but with an unusual level of planning and cold-bloodedness," Holt explained to her team. Melissa Parker created a false identity, got a job at the wedding, and chose the perfect moment to kill her ex-boyfriend. A blurry image from a surveillance camera appeared on the screen. A woman in a waitress uniform walking toward the garden at around the time of the murder. We compared this image to a photo of Melissa Parker. Despite the glasses and different hairstyle, the facial recognition software confirmed an 87% match. Ramirez added, "We discovered that Parker rented a car 2 days before the murder and checked into a motel under the name Alice Montgomery. Both were paid for with a prepaid card she purchased with cash." "What about the murder weapon?" Holt asked. "A Mont Blanc pen. Friends confirm that Jason gave Melissa one on their 4th anniversary. We found a box of items from their relationship in her apartment, but the pen wasn't there." Holt nodded. "It wasn't just a murder weapon, it was a message." That same evening, Detective Holt met with Ashley Turner, Melissa's best friend. The conversation took place in a small cafe away from the city center. "I can't believe she's capable of this," Ashley said, nervously clutching her coffee cup. "Yes, she was upset, even obsessed for a while, but murder? Tell me about her behavior in recent weeks." Ashley thought for a moment. "She became too calm. She said she was finally moving on, but something in her had changed. She had a kind of cold determination." "Did she mention any plans for her wedding day?" "She said she was going out of town to work on some projects. Now I realize it was an alibi." Holt wrote something down in her notebook. "Where do you think she might be hiding now?" "She has an old family cottage in Vermont. She rarely talks about it, but she once mentioned that it's a place where you can disappear from the world." The next morning, 15 minutes before dawn, a police tactical team surrounded a small wooden cottage in a wooded area of Vermont. Sarah Holt oversaw the operation, watching from a safe distance. To everyone's surprise, Melissa did not resist. When the police stormed the house, she was sitting in an armchair in front of the fireplace, calmly watching the fire. An open black notebook lay on the table next to her. At the Vermont police station, Holt conducted the initial interrogation of the detainee. Melissa looked almost detached, as if everything that was happening did not concern her. "Why did you do it?" the detective asked. "He betrayed me," Melissa replied with frightening calm. 4 years. I gave up my career for him, and he just wrote me out of his life when a better option came along." "And that's why you decided to kill him?" Melissa looked Holt straight in the eye. "I decided to give him what he deserved. Justice. It wasn't an impulsive decision. You planned it for months." "Yes. I wanted everything to be perfect. My last gift to him, on the most important day of his life." In the days that followed, the investigation gathered all the necessary evidence. In Melissa's black notebook, the police found a detailed description of her plan, including diagrams of Campbell House, the wedding schedule, and notes on Jason's habits. Forensic analysis confirmed that the DNA traces on the pen belonged to both the victim and Melissa. A psychiatric evaluation revealed that Melissa had signs of a personality disorder exacerbated by trauma from betrayal and rejection. However, experts unanimously concluded that at the time of the crime, she was fully aware of the nature of her actions. The trial began 6 months later and attracted considerable media attention. The story of a talented designer who turned into a cold-blooded killer because of a broken heart captured the public imagination. The prosecutor portrayed Melissa as a calculating manipulator who had spent months planning the perfect murder. The defense tried to build a case on emotional distress and temporary insanity, but to no avail. On the 7th day of the trial, Melissa unexpectedly changed her testimony and pleaded guilty. Her closing statement was brief. "I don't regret what I did. He ruined my life, and I ruined his. Now we're even." The court sentenced her to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Emily Brooks, still reeling from the shock, left Boston and moved to Europe. Howard Brooks retired early. Ryan Collins left the financial sector and opened a small bar on the coast of Maine. Ashley Turner became Melissa's only regular visitor in prison. During one of her visits, Melissa finally allowed her emotions to break through her icy mask. "You know what's ironic?" she said, looking through the glass separating them. "The moment I plunged the pen into his neck, I realized I still loved him, and that's exactly why I had to do it." Detective Sarah Holt kept Melissa's black notebook in her office as a reminder of how thin the line between love and hate is, and how a broken heart can become a weapon more dangerous than the sharpest knife. In her last interview before retiring, when a reporter asked her about the most memorable case of her career, Holt mentioned the wedding pen case. "What still bothers me," she said, "is her eyes. There was no remorse, no madness, only absolute certainty that she was right. Sometimes I think the most dangerous criminals are not those who act out of greed or anger, but those who are absolutely convinced that they are restoring justice."